afternoon. Welcome. You're watching NewsX. I'm Megha Sharma, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have with us Mr. Shombi Sharp, who is the resident coordinator of the United Nations to India. Thank you, Mr. Shombi Sharp, for joining me. And let's get straight into it. I want to understand, in this long association between India and the United Nations, how has this relationship evolved over the decades?
Well, thank you, Megha. And first of all, mujhe yahan bulane ke liye dhanyavad. It's wonderful to be here on behalf of the United Nations system. And I'd like to say that really our relationship in India has been an important partner, a founding member of the United Nations. And this is our 80th anniversary, so this is a milestone year. 80 years of India in the UN and UN in India. And when we look in years past, our partnership here, we've had a humble role to play in terms of a lot of important achievements in India. The White Revolution, for example, polio eradication, establishment of the IITs, these sorts of things. Now, today, this relationship has really evolved significantly. It's really a two-way relationship. So we're still, our agencies, we have 26 entities here in India. We have some presence and some delivering some results in every state and union territory of the country. But it's two ways in the sense that we also help identify and codify Indian best practice and take Indian best practice the other direction to the international stage, through South-South cooperation and different initiatives like that. So we're working with Indian ministries, government, institutions, civil societies around a lot of different areas within our overarching cooperation framework, India-UN cooperation framework. Things like we played a role in helping to government develop the digital platform for CoVIN, which was a key part of this 2.2 billion vaccine doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. We're engaged in working with the ministry and government to deliver fortified rice and grains to over 500,000 people as well, special targeting like that. 30 million children, we're helping to provide life skills and prepare for work and employment. These kinds of partnerships with government, civil society, and Indian private sector are really exciting because it's kind of cutting edge technology and innovation and delivering at scale that's really important for other countries in the world too.
Absolutely. And how do you see this transformation that has happened in India? We are on to our 80th of independence very soon. We are at this point of time pegged to even overtake Germany as the third biggest economy, fastest growing economy in the big economies of the world. Have the requirements and the needs of India, first as an underdeveloped country and now surging very fast towards hoping and aiming to be a developed nation in the next, 20, 30 years. How has United Nations role changed over the decades, right from the start, independence of the country to 2025? And then, the 2047 plan that the Prime Minister speaks about, a developed country. So how does United Nations see itself in its trajectory in the growth of India?
So I think, first of all, if I could step back for a moment and say that the world we live in right now is at a crossroads. As I mentioned, it's a year of milestones, the 80th anniversary of the UN. The very concept of countries and communities coming together to elaborate collective solutions for common challenges. It's the 10th anniversary of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is like putting numbers and targets on the aspirations that we have. And India has always been a very important part of this story. Now, at this very moment in time, we see certain actors in the geopolitical space, for the first time really since the Second World War, pulling back from this concept of multilateralism, of working together and going towards, me first and barriers are raising, trade tariffs. Really what we see now is that India's leadership is more important than ever because India is uniquely positioned to build bridges across divides. India is equally comfortable in the club of those countries that land on the moon, and is the fourth largest economy now in the world, will probably be third by 2030. It's very comfortable with the most advanced economies. It has the fastest growing large economy. At the same time, India is very comfortable in the world, developing world, the G77 world. It's an important voice for the global South. We saw that in the G20 presidency of India and the New Delhi declaration. So we see India as a very, very important champion of the principles of multilateralism, of the principles of equality and shared prosperity, climate action, climate justice, and a world in which the developing nations are able to catch up and achieve the same level of livelihoods and prosperity for their people. So it's really, this is a moment in time when India's leadership is more important than ever, I would say. And that goes along with, of course, the traditional areas in which India has always been a stalwart of support for peace and security, for example. India is the largest troop contributing country cumulatively for UN peacekeeping since the very beginning. Something like 290,000 men and women in uniform for peacekeeping missions. India has also been a leader in terms of women-led development, both women in peace and security, women-led units in peacekeeping, but also women-led development across the board. And climate action, as I was mentioning, Panchamrit targets, 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. These are truly, truly ambitious goals and aspirations that India has put forward and is moving rapidly towards. And if we look at 2030 agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, and then we look at 2047, Viksit Bharat. Really, in our view, these are two stepping stones on the same path to prosperity.
Yeah, you talk about how India has taken on this greater role in Global South as the voice of Global South, as the leading light when it comes to also, of course, G20. We saw that the African nations, African Union was made part of the G20. So and there has been, time and again, voice raised seeking India to be made part of the UNSC permanent membership, a permanent membership be given. There have been countries across the globe, including France, including Germany, United Kingdom. They all have come out, even United States of America, they've all come out and said that India needs to be part of the P5 nations, or make it P6, because by the sheer number of people that live in India, which is now, the biggest populated country of the world, and for that matter, the kind of strategic geopolitical role that India plays in global affairs merits it to be part of as a permanent member of the UNSC. Why do you think this adaptation has not happened for so long?
Well, I think that absolutely. I mean, the reform of multilateralism, institutions is absolutely a priority, no doubt about that. In fact, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, speaks frequently about the fact that we can't expect to deliver on a future for our grandchildren on the basis of institutions built for our grandparents. And there's no bigger champion for Security Council, UN Security Council reform, let's say, than the Secretary General himself. The challenge, of course, is that is the purview of member states. So it's not for the institution, the UN itself, to decide these things. The member states must decide those. And I think, you're absolutely right. Look, if you look at Security Council membership, permanent membership, resumes or, it would be impossible to, I think, articulate a country that has a stronger resume than India, for the reasons you just mentioned. Fourth, soon third largest economy, world's largest democracy, really leading force as a voice for the global South, and many, many other reasons. I mean, largest population, of course. So I think it's without doubt that India needs to be there for sure, and the Secretary General and the institution, I believe, fully agrees with that. It's for the member states to decide that process. Now, the Pact for the Future, which was agreed at the General Assembly, specifically commits to reforming the Security Council, including permanent membership. And so that is something that's in play. There's a process that's moving forward. Can't move fast enough. We are all very, very much hoping for that to move faster because, otherwise the institution suffers from the loss of legitimacy at that level. And I think it's always important to understand the difference between the UN, which is the peace and security, the world of the Security Council, which generates a lot of frustrations in the world. We see so many conflicts raging. We see Ukraine, we see Gaza, we see Sudan, that despite all efforts, the UN is not able to stop because of lack of action of member states and the Security Council. There's that world. Then there's the development, humanitarian, human rights world, where the UN is doing incredibly important work. Catering for almost 200 million people who are forced to flee their homes from conflict and to refugee support, or helping to vaccinate nearly half of the world's children, and all these really, really important development and humanitarian achievements that are moving ahead very, very quickly, but now at great risk because those who have been supporting multilateralism, the UN, and development and humanitarianism, some, as I mentioned before, are now pulling back from that. Of course, we've seen the United States withdrawing from a number of UN agencies and withdrawing huge amounts of support, billions of dollars of support to the UN, for example, and other international organizations also. But then you also have a number of European countries who, for various reasons, feel that they have to now move money directly from development budgets to defense budgets. I mean, you see in UK and Germany and many, many countries. So it's not an issue of one single country, it's a broader issue. And here again, India is such an important player. India really is investing so much in multilateralism. You see the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Biofuels Alliance, really a number of very important platforms helping to bring countries together across north, south, east, west divides like that. And I would note that we in the UN are very, very proud to be partners with India in this South-South cooperation development initiatives. There's the India UN Development Partnership Fund based out of the Office of South-South in New York, where India provides something like $150 million of support to over 60 countries, different development projects. We are just now launching a new initiative with the UN in India here, our country team, through my office. I'm working with the Ministry of External Affairs to help amplify Indian best practice, working with Indian institutions for the benefit of other countries from Latin America, Caribbean, to Africa, to other countries in Asia and Pacific as well. So this really is India's moment to go even a step higher than the great leadership India has already shown through Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
It's an interesting point that you raise about a number of these developed nations. You spoke about United States, you talked about European Union. There seems to be a waning support that is waning from the United Nations. And do you think in the future the very structure of the United Nations could look a lot more different than it currently does by way of a number of countries that have emerged as global economies, particularly in the global south, particularly in Asia, being bigger stakeholders in the goals that the United Nations has to fulfill?
No, look, absolutely. I think that one of the defining sort of moments of our time now is the rise of the global south, as we say. Recognizing that the world is very different from when these concepts of multilateralism were first defined and institutions put in place and stood up. For example, now the global south is accounting for the majority of economic growth in the world and will account for something more than 80%, I think, in the coming decades of growth. So that locus of growth, that's one that has shifted. Of course, population centers also has shifted. So and sources of innovation, here in India we have I like to say, the greatest youth generation in history. No country has ever had more young minds to tap for solutions ever before than India right here, right now. So a lot of the drivers and the engines of the future we want have shifted, and institutions need to reflect that. There's a whole process underway right now, a major reform process underway, and not just the UN, many multilateral institutions. But we are celebrating the UN 80th anniversary, UN at 80. Yeah. At the same time, the Secretary General has put forth an ambitious reform program to understand how can we do better with less, how can we better reflect the world as it is now today. And I think what you've mentioned is very much a big part of that, reflecting the important leading role that the Global South now has that maybe wasn't the case or wasn't as well reflected, decades back when the UN and others were stood up.
Right, absolutely. I do have to touch upon this report that has been published today. This is the report of the United Nations Security Council monitoring team that has released it. This is on the 1267 committee that had been formed to sanction terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. There has been a mention for the first time of the resistance force, which was behind the gruesome terror attack that happened in Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir on April 22nd. Now, India has been time and again pushing United Nations, the UNSC members, to designate the TRF, which is an offshoot of Lashkar-e-Toiba, as a proscribed terrorist organization, even before the terror attacks actually happened. But it has been facing a lot of resistance, particularly by the vetoing of this resolution by one particular member state. How do you think? And also, it's interesting to note that when you see this mention of this terrorist organization, the resistance front being put in the monitoring team's report for the first time, how does the UNSC and the United Nations actually function to allow for these terrorist organizations, terror groups to be sanctioned, to be proscribed, because it is at the end of the day for the greater good of the humanity to fight terrorism across the globe, despite the kind of challenges you face by what happened just a couple of months ago when a veto happened and unfortunately this terrorist organization was not proscribed, which would have been the right thing to do.
Well, I think, first of all, let me reiterate that the Secretary General was very, very quick to express his deep condemnation of the horrific terrorist attacks in Pahalgam, and express sincere condolences to the country, to the families, to everybody here in India affected, and stating very strongly that terrorism can never be justified on any grounds in any case. And so he's really stood very firm on that throughout, and specifically including the horrific Pahalgam attacks. I think that this has been, I've not yet read that specific report that just came out today, so I can't really speak in detail about that. But I can say that this is one area of very intense collaboration and partnership between India and the United Nations. And it's a top priority of the Secretary General, Guterres. So one of the very first things that he did when he came to office was to create the new Office on Counterterrorism. So it's basically to really ramp up the resources and the capabilities of the UN to help bring member states together precisely in the fight against terrorism. India obviously was a very big proponent of that and helped in setting up of that office. India has played an important role when India was president of the Security Council in 2022. India brought the whole counterterrorism committee of the UN Security Council here to India. I had the privilege to join. I went to Mumbai. We, of course, commemorated the attacks there, the victims of the attacks there in Mumbai. And here in Delhi, India led to the New Delhi Declaration, which was basically really ramping up the capacities of the world community to address new and emerging technologies, to use new and emerging technologies in the fight against terrorism, to try to get ahead of the curve in that regard as well. So I think this really is in particular an area of very, very close collaboration between India and the UN, and where India really is a very strong leadership voice.
Okay, and also looking forward in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, what are the key projects that the United Nations is wanting to spearhead in India?
Well, I think so. Here in India, we again, as I mentioned, we have our cooperation framework, which runs through 2027. But really, it's about leveraging the investments that India is making already, helping to amplify those, of course, here at home in India, but then also taking those innovations to other countries. And again, there's the list is very long. But digital public infrastructure. I mean, India is a world-class digital public infrastructure. The India Stack, the Jam Trinity, I mean, has been able to achieve incredible financial inclusion. Women with digital banking accounts, for example, I think that's gone from something like 25% to well over 80, 85 something percent, the vast majority, just in the last 6 or so years. So we want to help take these successes to other countries. Climate action, the investments in renewable energy here and green hydrogen and electric mobility, electric vehicles is really, really important and something to be embraced and taken everywhere in the country, but beyond as well. So many other areas, women-led development, for example, as I mentioned, also looking at that, and a lot of other areas, nutrition, a lot of very exciting, we have
Yes.
WFP has a partnership with government and with at the state level. It's a grain ATM, where people can get their PDS, their grain supplies provided 24 hours a day through a machine. So it gets rid of waiting lines and this sort of thing, all digital, using the latest technologies. The vaccine, Maitri vaccine, India's pharmacy to the world, yeah. Really, really important. We know the next pandemic will come. We just don't know when exactly. And India showed that it plays such an important role in helping provide resilience. And again, climate justice, climate action. Preparing and building resilience in communities across the country and across the world is key. So, I like to say one of my favorite sayings is SDGs दुनिया में मुमकिन होंगी क्योंकि India में मुमकिन होंगी Bharat में मुमकिन होंगी. And that really truly is the case, because the scale of impact here really moves the needle in terms of the global numbers as well. And that's why we in the UN feel so, myself, colleagues in the UN system, feel so privileged to have the opportunity to be working in India. It would be amazing at any time. India is a civilizational culture of many thousands of years. And our UNESCO colleagues play a big role in working with government on celebrating that cultural heritage, world heritage, and tangible heritage as well. But especially now at this moment in time, it's very exciting to be here.
I have to say your Hindi is impeccable, and then the fact that you've stayed here only 4 years, which is so which is very, very commendable. And I do want to understand from you, you've spent this much time over here. It has not been a long time, and we hope that you carry on with your tenure for I don't know, extend it or whichever way things go in the United Nations. But what are the kind of challenges that you faced in rolling out programs, dealing with bureaucracy, working with the ministries? If you could shed more light into that. And what do you think could be improved in a bit to streamline things?
Well, I think that, India's strength also can be a challenge, right? That's obviously the size and the incredible diversity. I mean, India is the most diverse, richly diverse country that I've ever had the opportunity to be in, perhaps in the world. So, and being a very vibrant democracy, having a very strong federal structure with a lot of powers at the level of states and subnational, this is a real strength. It, of course, also brings some complexity in terms of governance and this sort of thing. So having the data to drive policy making, that is a challenge, and that's something where we've been very proud to play a humble role in working with governments on that front. And India has really made important, let's say, progress in that field. So we call it SDG localization, right? Which is, India was actually the very first country in the world to take the Sustainable Development Goals and apply them at subnational levels. So to create an India SDG index. And we, my office and UNDP also have worked closely with Niti Aayog, for example, in creating this whole index architecture. And what that does is that gives the power of data and information to the policymakers at all state levels and district levels and down even lower. And it really works. We go and we meet with the policymakers, with the committees and things. They're really, and it's this positive competition, right, of states looking at each other and so, they're doing better there. How are they doing? How are they achieving better, maternal, health outcomes? And maybe we can learn from them. So that sharing information across states is key. Again, Niti Aayog is a leader in that, and we work with them in many different areas. We work with the Ministry of Statistics in terms of citizen-generated data. This is a brand new area, leveraging the technologies that we have now, leveraging AI. It's quite exciting. India's about to launch the next census process.
Yeah.
We're working with the Registrar General of India and looking at, we've again played a small but I think important role in working with India's census preparation in the past, and we will do so again now. And that's another area. One of our new South-South cooperation projects with MEA is also working with Registrar General to help to help countries in the Caribbean enhance their ability to undertake census, and also with a digital application too. So I think that's where, very large country, wonderfully rich and diverse. It brings challenges in terms of governance and data, but a lot is happening in the right direction. And it's a two-way. We learn from India, we meaning the international community, we learn from India, we bring experiences here, and together it really gives us hope for better outcomes globally.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp, for joining me, answering all my questions, and it's a pleasure to host you on NewsX.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here, and आपसे बात करके बहुत अच्छा लगा.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए.